Hey there, it's Leona. Welcome to Zen Mindfulness Shodo. Today, we're gonna practice Shodo meditation while focusing on the Katakana character for E. So, let's begin our beautiful journey together. When you write a character, imagine a square about the size of the character that you are gonna write like this. First, I'm gonna write it. Then I'm gonna explain the points and tips for writing the character beautifully in detail. Alright, now I'm gonna explain the points and tips for writing this character beautifully. The first stroke, the tip of the brush, starts from a point, a bit higher than the top half of the middle vertical line. Place the brush at about a 45-degree angle while holding it straight up. Before moving the brush downward to the left, lightly push the brush towards the tip of it in order to stabilize the brush. This stroke is a little bit curving down, and the angle is about 60 degrees. It scoops downward to the left while curving down and getting thinner. The end point of the stroke is lower than the middle horizontal line, but it's higher than the center point of the bottom left square. When the end point is lower than the center point of the bottom left square, the first stroke looks too long for the second stroke. But when it's higher than the middle horizontal line, the first stroke looks too short for the second stroke. So aim for a point somewhere around this height. The second stroke starts from the middle of the first stroke. Lightly attach only the tip of the brush to the first stroke. It looks more beautiful to show the 45-degree angle of the starting point like this. Like the beginning point of the first stroke, place the brush at about a 45-degree angle and lightly push the brush towards the tip of it and stabilize the brush until the space above the starting point of the first stroke and the space below the end point of the second stroke are almost the same size. It moves straight down on the middle vertical line. The vertical line, which appears perfectly straight, will look even straighter and more stable when written with a slight curve to the right. At the end of the stroke, like the beginning point of the stroke, without moving the brush, lightly push the brush towards the tip of it just for a second. Then the end point will look like this. At the end of the stroke, if you just lift the brush from the paper, the jagged edges of the brush will appear in the stroke. In order to avoid that, stop at the end point for a second. Like the starting point of the stroke, lightly push the brush towards the tip of it. Then the end point will look smoother. The katakana character E has a relatively simple shape, so just a slight difference in lines can drastically change the overall impression of the character. One of the key points to make it look beautiful is the angle of the first stroke. For instance, I'm gonna write examples here. In the top example, since the angle of the first stroke is closer to the middle horizontal line, the overall character looks a bit unstable. Contrary to the above example, in the bottom example, because the angle of the first stroke is closer to the middle vertical line, this space looks smaller. This space. In the example above, the second stroke looks like it's carrying the first stroke on its back, and the overall balance of the character looks unbalanced. On the other hand, in the example below, the angle of the first stroke is closer to the middle vertical line, so the entire character looks like a vertical rectangle, which looks unstable and doesn't look very beautiful. So try not to make the angle of the first stroke closer to the middle horizontal line like the top example, but also try not to make it closer to the middle vertical line like the bottom one. If you create the angle of the first stroke somewhere between these two, which is about 45 to 60 degrees, the character will look more stable, balanced, and beautiful. The next point is the ratio of the lengths of the first stroke to the second stroke. I'm gonna write examples here. In the example above, the second stroke looks too short for the first stroke. In the example below, the second stroke looks too long for the first stroke. The key to writing so the link's balance between the first and second strokes looks good is to write in such a way that the line connecting the end points of the first and second strokes forms an angle of approximately 45 degrees. The angle formed by the line connecting the end points of the first and second strokes in the first example is narrower than 45 degrees. The angle formed by the line connecting the end points of the first and second strokes in the second example is wider than 45 degrees, isn't it? When written like this, the characters don't look balanced and beautiful. So pay attention to the links of the second stroke as well. The last point is about the beginning point of the second stroke. I'm gonna write an example here. When the beginning point of the second stroke starts above the first stroke like this, the 45-degree angle of the starting point is hidden by the first stroke. This is a small detail, but it can change the overall appearance of the character. Therefore, if you like the overall appearance of this katakana character E, start the second stroke above the first stroke and hide the 45-degree angle of the starting point. But if you prefer this look, try attaching only the tip of the brush to the first stroke and clearly show the 45-degree angle of the starting point of the second stroke. Alright? Keep these points and tips in mind when you practice. The key points and tips for writing katakana neatly, as explained in the video, are concisely summarized in this book. Each page allows you to practice one character. If you're interested, please see the description. When you practice with a brush, I recommend that you place a few pieces of paper under the page that you're writing on, so that the ink doesn't bleed onto the page under it. Alright, let's get started. Before you start writing, take a deep breath and clear your mind. Slowly breathe in as much air as you can through your nose and exhale all the negative emotions that you've been holding until this moment through your mouth. When you're mentally ready to write, you can start writing. Check the starting point, end point, the angle of the stroke, and the direction of the curve. After that, without hesitation, aim for the end point and move the brush smoothly. Try to write slower than you normally write, putting your heart and soul into each stroke. However, if you move the brush too slowly, the ink will bleed and the lines will become thicker in areas where you don't want them to be thicker. And if you move the brush too quickly, the ink will fade. The lines will become thinner in areas you don't want them to be thinner. Or the ink will disappear midway through, making the strokes shorter than you want them to be. So concentrate on finding the right speed. Once you've finished writing the character, look at the character as a whole and think about what changes you should make next in order to make it look even more beautiful. Of course, you don't have to take all the tips and points that I've told you and copy my way of writing the character. Trust your own sense of beauty and adjust accordingly. It's important that you're satisfied with the shapes of the characters you write. So please use my tips and points as ideas and hints for adjusting the shape of the character to your sense of beauty. Of course, you can change the shape so much that it no longer looks like a character. If you notice that you're thinking about something else while writing, immediately refocus on what you are writing. By repeating this exercise, you'll be able to notice when your attention starts to turn to something unrelated to your current action, and gradually improve your concentration and self-control. So, let's practice together. Alright, let's learn and practice together again in my next video. Thank you for watching.